One of the questions I've been asked pretty regularly has been if LSU is going to reschedule the Texas game. And my feeling on that has been, I'm sure LSU would love to reschedule the Texas game, but I think it is going to be exceedingly difficult to make that happen in any time in the near future. Here was Verge Osbury earlier today, Monday, on Off the Bench with Jordy and T-Bob, and they asked him that question about the possibility of rescheduling LSU Texas, which of course was canceled because of COVID.
We've had just, a conversation about, we're going to get to that when it comes. I think right now the Big 12, all of us, we're just trying to get this year on, and we're concentrating right now on this year. I think after to kick the ball off on September 26th, then we all get back together and start talking about how we move, change games, do things. And we hope to get the Texas game back here sooner than later. We have our schedules made out already. I think, Jordan, the future schedule is going to change some. You might see where 2 Power 5 schools on a team schedule. So, Coach O, one thing about him, he's not afraid to do that. And he wants those type of games, and we want those type of games. So we're going to look to get that game back here, and we've had, informal conversations. But after we kick the ball off on September 26th, we'll get more serious conversation.
So there's a couple of things that are encouraging there. The idea of Texas making that trip back to Baton Rouge isn't dead. And my assumption is that's going to be a huge mountain to scale. But clearly, Verge has got his climbing gear, and he's ready to go try to make it happen, which is fantastic because I know LSU fans want that game. You went a year ago. LSU made the trip to Austin. And look, LSU created a memory forever. 3rd and 17 is something that LSU fans will remember forever. You got Joe Burrow with this, the Queen, the Princess wave, Clyde Edwards-Helaire doing the horns down, Jimmy Burrow in the stands doing the horns down. There were so many amazing memories that came from playing that game, which, by the way, as a random aside, is why you need to play more games like that, because you have those types of forever moments. Anyway, but the reality is, and LSU fans desperately wanted, and I'm sure they wanted that game back in Baton Rouge, and LSU administrators wanted that game. LSU was planning on netting in the $10 to $11 million range for that game. It was going to be a massive windfall of cash for this athletic department having Texas come to Baton Rouge. Now, that goes away. Here's why that becomes so difficult to try to get it back on the schedule. Next year, LSU's at McNeese. LSU's at UCLA, out in LA. They also play McNeese. 2022, Florida State in New Orleans. 2023, Florida State in Orlando. 2024, UCLA makes the return trip to Baton Rouge. In 2025, you're at Clemson. In 2026, Clemson makes the return trip. In 2027, you go to Oklahoma. 2028, Boomer Sooner comes to Baton Rouge. 2029, you got Arizona State coming to Death Valley. A year later, 2030, you're out in the desert in Tempe. 2031, you got to Salt Lake City. To turn that Mormon city on its head, LSU going to Utah. Oh, my God, I can't even believe that's happening. And then 2032, Utah comes to Baton Rouge. If you abide by your current scheduling format, where you only have 1 Power 5 non-conference opponent and 8 conference opponents, you can't play Texas until at the earliest 2033. 2033. Now, could you find a spot to fit it in? Well, remember how the Big 12 currently schedules. They play all of their non-conference games the first 3 weeks, and then they play 9 Big 12 games. The rest of the schedule is all Big 12. So as it currently stands, it's not like there's that spot later in the schedule where you can fit in a non-conference game like some SEC schools do at the end of November before their rivalry game. That opportunity doesn't exist when you play a Big 12 school. So Texas and LSU would have to do away with a currently scheduled non-conference opponent in one of these years, or something fundamentally would have to change within the conferences, both conferences, plural, scheduling format that would allow that game to be played in a year where LSU already has one of these. That's the other thing Verge mentioned, is we may see a scheduling change where you play multiple Power Fives. Think about this year. You play 10 SEC games. This is going to open the door to prove that you can play 10 Power 5 games, and it's going to be okay. Some schools already do it. USC last year played 11 games against Power 5 teams. It can be done. Georgia plays Georgia Tech every year as its rivalry game. They also will start the season often with one of those kickoff games. They were going to play Virginia this year. So Georgia had its 8 conference games, Virginia and Georgia Tech. 10 Power 5 games. South Carolina, same thing. They were going to start the season. Sometimes we see South Carolina playing North Carolina. And then they play their 8 conference games and finish with Clemson. 10. Like, it's doable, and it's done by some SEC schools now. So that may happen, but finding the spot on the schedule where it can work against a Big 12 team complicates the matter. But the best news of that is Verge isn't just saying, what can we do? We think back to 2005. LSU had a home-and-home schedule with Arizona State. Arizona State was supposed to play in Baton Rouge in 2005. Hurricane Katrina hits. LSU's home game, air quotes, gets moved out to Tempe, and they end up scratching the return trip, so LSU didn't go to Tempe twice, and now they're back on the schedule for 2029 and 2030. They got it back on the schedule, but 15 years later, they got it back on the schedule. So I would love to see it work, but as the schedules are currently constructed, the only way it can happen in the near future is if both Texas and LSU do away with one of their Power 5 games scheduled in September so they can make that work for the Big 12 schedule. Otherwise, I don't know how it works unless if you're LSU and in one of those years where you play a Power 5 like we just talked about, like 2025 or 2026, or like where you have the Clemson or the Oklahoma, where you play 2 Power 5 non-conference games in September, which seems like schedule suicide, and I can't imagine that happening either. So, like I mentioned, this is a steep hill to climb, but apparently at least LSU's administrators have got their climbing gear, they got their helmets on, and they're looking to go see if they can make this work. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.